Oh my. Well, we certainly had a plan tonight, but just before you come on, something happens and fucks you up. Yeah. New music, old music. I actually tried to put some other music on and Apple wouldn't let me do it. So good to see everybody. It's the body we stand. It's Saturday night at what? 9:06 on May 6th. Cinco de Sexto. Say so. I don't know. Yeah, what the hell?
What's
Oh,
wrong with you?
oh, there he is. I hear
Wrong?
whispers.
What's wrong with you?
Okay, what's wrong with me? You're not supposed to say anything yet, okay?
What is wrong with you?
Don't mind the voice coming out of that circle over here, okay? Okay. Joey texted me about 50 times in the last 24 hours asking me if there's going to be a show. So it's official, Joey. There is a show tonight. That's what you get for not answering my questions, Joey, all those years. All right. So yes, we're having a show, and we have quite a few people already here. We've got Veg, we've got Joey, we've got Keith from New Zealand. All right, Keith, good to see you. Haven't seen you, and it's 1:06 p.m., so it's kind of tomorrow. What a bit of time traveling there. We get Gary Peacock from my neck of the woods and Dave's former neck of the woods. Franz is here. And special shout out to Veg with his pointless video. He said there's no point to his videos and it's pointless. And I'm beginning to believe that that's about true for everything out there these days because what's the point? So, anyway, my compadre, my co host, my good friend, some would call him a lunatic at times, but my good friend David Price. Dave, how is
Yeah.
David Price feeling today?
Well, I think the big question is, Brian, how are you feeling? First of all, I'd like to compliment you on your skinhead Aryan Nation head. I think it looks really good. I assume, and you know, it's kind of easier to get your clan hood over it if you have to go. So I mean, it's really multi-purpose for what you want.
Well,
Secondly, I think it's great that you tonight you rushed from the bowling alley, your bowling league, to be here because I see that you have your bowling shirt on.
my
So
bowling.
skin,
This is a shirt I got up in New Hope, Pennsylvania, on clearance.
it looks
So,
like a shirt you got. It looks like a shirt you got from No Hope, but
and
that's
I
that's
no, I'll go back to this other scene so you can see. It was just something about it, and Ron said, "This is a kind of a strange shirt. You think it would be all right?" And I said, "I don't know." And then I didn't take it. But then before I left, I said, "You know what? I'm going to take that shirt. It was for like $10 or something, $9. I don't know. So, but it's very comfortable. And it's very smooth.
it. Probably Brian would have been better had you taken that $9 or $10 and
Right.
just thrown it on the ground and walked away. But anyway,
Yeah. But anyway, well, Dave, I had a lot of things. Well, not a lot. I only really had a couple of things to really talk about. And I know you've got some things to talk about. But we're going to have to start off talking about the breaking news. Although this type of breaking news is so everyday-ish that it doesn't even have to be breaking. You kind of almost expect it. And some lunatic down in Texas, we've got plenty of them down there, went to a mall in Allen, Texas, and started shooting them up. And there are deaths. We don't know how many. We know that 9 people were sent to the hospital. The shooter was killed. Um, Before I make any comment about the asshole governor down there, Dave, you just heard this for the first time about 2 minutes ago. You're not surprised, are you?
just another day in America.
Just another
Uh,
day in a.
I'd love to say that we are going to solve the gun problem that we have, but I'm going to say that we're not going to solve the gun problem that we have. It's now official. There are more guns in America than there are people. Um, the NRA, even though you don't hear about it much, still has a quiet power, right? Um, in many states, Texas being one of them, still that idea of the Wild West stands your ground. I think what's getting even more frightening, if as if it could, is the fact that really, literally, nowhere is safe. Okay,
Right.
and literally, no one is safe. You can, as it's been proven, you can try to get in the wrong car. You can try to get in the next door house. You can go to a mall. How many people? It'd be interesting. It would be interesting. Uh, Statistic tonight to know how many people today visited a mall somewhere in their area.
Hmm.
Uh,
And how many are
and
going to go to malls anymore?
but it's something I think that we really have become somewhat inured to. Um, I think for me, the moment that kind of crystallized it, the fact that we were lost, is Sandy Hook. If you're not doing
Hmm.
not if you're not going to do anything about that, then really, what are you going to do anything about?
Right.
There's six or seven very realistic, I think, gun proposals out there. One would be a ban on automatic weapon. I don't understand. What's the argument? Well, the argument would be we need to defend our home against attack by the United States. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I respect that opinion when in your house you have nuclear weapons.
Right.
Until you have that, it's a meaningless point. It's a meaningless point. They have more people. They have more weapons. If they want to take over, they will. It gets back to a misunderstanding that is ludicrous, a misreading, which the Supreme Court did of the Second Amendment. The beginning of the Second Amendment says a well regulated militia. So let's look at that. First of all, since it's first, it could be talking about militia only. And that's really what it was talking about. That's really what it was talking about. Think about it. America is coming into a time when they had been, they'd been under the subjugation of Britain and British soldiers. So they wanted to be able to defend themselves. But they also didn't want a standing army, which is kind of interesting because they were fearful of a standing army because of what had happened. So we're going to have these, Minutemen, militia, all over the 13 colonies. What I find interesting is, though, they did not store the powder in their homes. That was stored in a central location. So that was part of the regulation. So, but you could say, you could make a strong argument, I think, that with the word militia, once the militia is gone, and our militia today, really, I suppose, if you had to equate it to something, would be the National Guard, right? I mean, that would be
Right.
the
Right. Right.
thing, not the standing army, but the National Guard. Now, the other thing is, well, let's say you dismiss that. A well regulated. That means that anyone who says you cannot have regulations on guns is fucked up
Right.
beyond belief.
And tonight is a
Beyond,
perfect example. That wasn't
beyond,
regulated well.
beyond belief. Now, where the debate comes in, and I would entertain that debate, is what is well regulated. But we just
Right.
have too many people who just shut it down, as if you know. And again, if you travel anywhere out of the country, or you talk to anybody who comes here from another country, they're just fascinated. How does this happen? Um, it's a modern. Like I said, it's more of a modern thing. Certainly in the 20s, when we had the problem with organized crime, mafia, Al Capone, etc., they put a ban on machine guns that still exists. So certainly, historically. So Brian, I mean, I it's feeble thoughts and prayers. It
I
doesn't
mean, it's
mean much.
insulting. It's insulting.
Well, I don't know if it's
And I'm not saying
insulting.
this as an atheist, which I am, but I'm saying
No, no,
I
no, no,
find it
no.
insult. Every time I hear that, I want to puke.
Well, I know, but it's the best. It's the best we can do. So I kind of read it now. Good. I mean, I don't do the prayers
You
part.
don't you don't find that insulting though when somebody says thoughts and prayers because it's just the first thing that it just comes out of their mouth with this, a
Well,
lack of sincerity.
it depends on who's saying it. Just like a gun is not an evil thing in and of itself, right?
Right.
Words are not evil things in and of themselves. So if it's a politician saying it, especially a Republican politician, a gun supporting politician, yeah, then of course it's obscene. But I think people are moved by it, and so to put it out as thoughts and prayers, it's meaningless. It doesn't do anything, but it's a way to cope, I guess. Um, yeah, France allowing more guns leads to military police than police state. Of course, there are some people who would argue now that we're almost in a police state, especially Black Americans. I think, yeah, Keith. The idea is that this, and again, what's happening is stand your ground. Now, Brian, tonight, if I had a gun, I don't. If I had a gun in our apartment and somebody broke in and I thought it was going to be, a question of me, him, Judy, him, whatever, I think I could shoot him and kill him and have no guilt in my conscience. But that's
well regulated.
Exactly.
Personally.
For a purpose. I mean, I wouldn't have it. So it's kind of a moot point. It's talking about hypotheticals. But what I don't like is to stand your ground. Stand your ground. What? It's just too loosely interpreted. Stand your ground. You look at me wrong and I can kill you.
Right.
You show up on my porch and I can kill you. You go to the mall and I can kill you.
Right.
You go to your synagogue and I can kill you. Your children can go to school and
it's a license to kill.
Right. And look at the states, Texas, Florida that are leading the way. Right now, they're the two that are leading the way in so many negative things.
And but Texas, by the way, is one of these states where you don't even have to register. You don't have to do anything. You can just buy the thing.
No. And it's funny. I remember I was, a few years ago, I was out in the West and I stopped at a small store in New Mexico to get something. I don't know. It was one of those gas station convenience stores, right? And it was my first time ever seeing someone live in person. The clerk had a gun on his hip. And I'm going, I don't feel comfortable with that. Even just being around it. So I'm not really the person to talk to. If I ruled America, we really would confiscate the guns. I'm sorry, we really would. And I don't know how you do that, just make it illegal to show a gun. So if you want to keep, or show a gun for any purpose other than target practice and hunting. But certainly, Brian, where you live and where I lived, South Jersey is a huge hunting area. I guarantee you that there are more guns probably than people in, maybe not in Upper Deerfield Township where we lived and where you live now, but certainly in Lawrence Township or Down Township, the rural township. Yeah, well, Keith, I think, again, it's funny you should mention that. I was going to talk a little bit about that tonight. The idea of the Constitution. So I'll just bring it up quickly and I'll go again. And not to belabor the point, but as people know, 4 weeks ago, right? I had triple bypass surgery. And I feel marvelous. I feel great. There aren't words to describe it. Today, I went into D.C. I walked 7,000 steps to do things you can do, right? But that, during the time the Constitution was written, I'd be dead, right?
Right.
I'd be dead. Now, you say, well, no, but so many things we're finding out are just outdated. You don't wear you don't wear a tri-corner hat to cover up your Aryan Nation head. You don't do, so whether it's fashion, whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's life. And they made it, the founding fathers made it very difficult to alter the Constitution.
I don't know who this is. I'm wondering if it's in our area, but somebody says there's a storm headed here now. I have to go offline and watch YouTube tomorrow. Well, we can't see your username. I don't know. It could be anybody.
Well, anyway, thank you for letting us know. And thank you for the take care. So you come back to this Constitution, I find it really deficient, and we're paying a price for that now. Let's look at one other thing. I don't want to belabor the fact, but we went in here with Constitution. We've talked kind of ad nauseum about Clarence Thomas as a judge. He is the most corrupt motherfucker who's ever sat on the Supreme Court. He is the worst judge, with the exception of the judges who ruled in the, during slavery times. No question about it, right? But the Constitution does not provide for any oversight of Supreme Court judges. Why? Do you know how many Supreme Court justices there were when the country was founded, Brian?
I don't know.
One, John Jay. That was it. And John Jay was an integral part of the founding fathers. So I don't even think they could conceive. Certainly they couldn't conceive. Think about it. Can you really conceive, sitting there tonight, or anyone listening, Can you really conceive of life in 200 years? I can't. I can't conceive of life
I
tomorrow.
can't see there being life in 200 years.
Well,
I can
you
see
and I
that
agree. There will be.
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying. I could see the sterilization of the planet occurring. I mean,
Well, I think there'll be life.
it wouldn't take much, given
It may
these
be.
days.
It may be bacteria, but I think there'll still be life. Whether human life is always
Well, anybody who lived near Chernobyl would kind of get where I'm coming from.
right, and so far. Well, we have so many ways. We talked about that too. So many ways to destroy.
We don't know, but you and I both won't know either way.
Well, and
none of
just
us
think
will
about
know.
that. Just say we said, but I mean, that alone. How many ways are there now to destroy the United
Thank you,
States of
Joey.
America since the Constitution was put in place? I mean, nuclear weapons, inconceivable. Environment being destroyed. They probably had an idea of terrorist activities. I mean, they looked at the Native Americans as terrorists. We were really the terrorists, but you've got so many ways now. So yeah, but to close the gun question, as far as I'm concerned, I've actually moved on. I fought it for a long time down here, and I mean, I continue to do that. I'll send some money to an anti-gun organization. Work with a couple of organizations that do that, but I'm not optimistic at all. I'm not. I don't see us. I mean, will it be the destruction of America? No. Will it be the death of many, many, many innocent people? Yes. As witnessed tonight in Texas.
I'm just texting Ronnie here for a second. I need to get a drink. I'm not going to leave the show here for a second. There we go.
People were asking if you would.
Okay. Well, you've mentioned when we're talking about the shooting, will anything ever be done anyway? But my point is this, is that, you look at what happened during 9/11. If this had been somebody from the Middle East doing something, things would have been done on Monday and Congress. But because this is, the favorite pet of the Republican Party, and not even really the Republican Party, because most Republicans have some idea that, this is kind of crazy. And I have my ideas why, even so, they don't really do much about it.
It's called needing votes.
But what I want to go into about this is, and I'm kind of going off to a jug honey here. I've seen what's happened with Amazon, how popular it became during COVID. And you see people just didn't go to malls, and the malls were trying to kind of hit. But now it seems like every weekend at the mall, there's some type of shooting. Nobody wants to go to the malls, especially so. I don't feel comfortable going to the malls now, because now it's in my head. So, I'm not really pro-business, but I feel bad for the businesses and the malls. Well, they won't get anybody coming there. And then next, what's it going to be? The restaurants?
Well,
I mean, really, are we going to have to just live at home because the Republican Party wants to be intransigent on everything?
If you're fearful, yeah. And the question becomes, when is it wisdom, and when are you letting fear rule your actions? And each person has to answer that. Each person has to answer. I was at the mall. There's nothing at the mall. We went there for, I don't even know, to walk through, I guess. Here we have a fairly large mall right a few blocks away. And I've just never been a mall person. I grew up at a time, when there were no malls. So teenage hangouts were not malls. They became that.
Right.
Now,
we all used to hang out at malls.
And now the one thing I did notice walking through that mall, we did the whole thing just to get some extra steps. Very few stores were geared for people my age. And when I say my age, I don't mean 70. I'm talking about over 50. So when you say, are people not going to go? Young people go to the malls much more than older people, Brian. And young people think they're, invincible, invulnerable, going to live forever. So I don't know if for the mall crowd. And again, I don't want to make light of a very serious subject, but I'd be interested, and I will say, what were the age of the people shot tonight at the mall?
Right. Well, we won't know that yet. But the whole point is, what grievances do they have, these people?
Well, first of all, they're mentally disturbed. and that's not an excuse. It's just true.
Right.
No
The
one walks
Republicans will
in.
use that as an excuse
Well,
because they want to blame it on mental
Keith,
health.
boy, uh, Keith, boy, why is the U.S. so much worse than other nations? I guess we're still talking about the guns because we don't do anything to regulate them, and we haven't, right?
Right.
And the American myth is the Minuteman, and Concord and Lexington, saving the day with the country, all the way up to the wild, wild west. And that Western myth is tough to dispel, and it should be dispelled. I mean, one of the first rules that most towns had in the wild, wild west, in quotes, was check your guns when you entered the town. So, it's something interesting to talk about. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would entertain anybody, if anybody in our audience or anybody anywhere who thinks they have an answer for it. I know that I don't. And I think it puts it on many levels. I have two grandchildren. One is in 8th grade and one is in 9th grade. And so they go to schools. They go to school in Alabama. That doesn't mean that it could happen anywhere. But Alabama, of course, is one of those southern states whose gun laws are pretty lax.
Well, let's go into the southern states for a second, Dave, because, Ronnie and I were going to the dump today, and to people outside of...
Wait a minute. Well, you said, I'm sorry. I thought you said you and Ronnie were taking a dump today.
No. You
don't need to share that.
There's that. You're not quite hearing me correctly. But,
okay, I'm sorry.
We're looking at the license plates, and in Bridgeton, there are a lot of illegals with, these license plates. But the ironic thing about the license plates, they're all from southern states. These are all states that are anti-immigration, but where are all the license plates coming from? So the point is, it seems like every major problem that's happening today generally comes from these states. They're the ones that are causing the problems. I mean, I don't see license plates, from New York and whatever, but I see a ton of them from Oklahoma, Alabama, Ohio. That's a red state. But they're mainly red states. So it seems like this minority in terms of population is just controlling the rest of the country. And whether it's gun control or any other problem, they are the ones causing it. These are fucked up people. This is like the 18th century controlling the 21st century.
Correct, Brian. And why is that? It's because of the idea of the power of the states, right? We have a federal government that really can't impose much, right? Because it can't really, it does impose, I shouldn't say, it does taxes and it does the army and that kind of thing. But what it doesn't be able to do is regulate behavior in the states. That's
right.
left to each individual state. So if you break it down, really, you talk about it. We talk about divided we stand. We're going to simplify it a little bit and maybe make it too simple, but basically that's the West Coast and the East Coast and any major city
right.
anywhere else. Now, sometimes a major city is enough to carry a state. Atlanta is so big now compared to what, in Georgia.
Philadelphia did it for Biden.
So, that could happen. And again, even there, another thing that can do something too, Brian, but it does not have to change the state, is college towns. For example, my grandchildren, as I say, they live in Tuscaloosa. And Tuscaloosa is, believe it or not, is a fairly liberal place because of the college kids. Now, granted, there's still a lot of Southern kids who are there. And of course, football is king, but you really don't want to shoot at a football game because you want to watch the football game. You know what I mean? So even there, it is divided we stand. Now, that doesn't mean things don't happen in states. California is so large. New York City, the homeless guy that was killed just recently, created quite a stir there. I think, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I haven't studied it. But I do think that we are getting somewhat inured to the value of human life. I really think we are.
Well, it's obvious the way we treat animals. Like you said, Bridgeton or anywhere. We consider hunting a sport. It's not, let's call it what it is. It's called killing. And I don't want to get into animal rights. I'm just saying,
no.
It's just obvious to me, you're putting holes through things for your own enjoyment.
Well,
I don't see too many people, having their rabbit salad sandwich, after the hunt. Well, they'll hang something up on the wall.
I'm smiling because Judy and I are binge watching. We're late to the what is it? Late to the show, but we're watching Yellowstone, which basically, for anybody who doesn't know, it takes place in Montana. It's about modern day cowboys, right? And there was a scene the other day where uh, the young child, who's going to be the featured young child in this, goes out hunting the first time, and your man, when they get done, he does shoot the deer, and then his father and his grandfather smear blood on him for the first kill. So of course there's something, whether it's demonstrating power over something, that you can take their lives. Um, it's been said again, I'm speaking somewhat not as an expert, but it's been said that there are some killers who just really get pleasure out of it, right? I sooner think there's more killers that just get mad and have a gun and go crazy. The serial killers are, when's the last time you
Right.
really heard of this serial? So it's kind of moved from the serial killers, from the Ted Bundys, right?
And the Howard Unruhs of the
And,
past.
and those, and again, not to say it didn't happen. One of the first real shootout was at the Texas University of Texas Tower, if you remember. That
Right.
was in the
Right.
60s, and then the first really mass murder that really got thing was Richard Speck in Chicago. So certainly, we've been killing people. If you want the biblical myth, it's Cain and Abel. But I'm sure that very quickly, someone was killed for whatever reason: jealousy, power, uh, craziness, and you would think that. And you say this all the time, Brian. You would think with the amount of time that's elapsed in human history that we would be better. And guns are an example of why we aren't. We're
Absolutely.
no better, and maybe worse because there's more information out there. The other thing I think is just absurd is Congress won't even fund studies to see what the damage is done in gun violence. Everything else could be studied, right? In terms of that, but the NRA, and again, honestly, when's the last time you've seen the NRA in the headlines? It's been more than a year,
Right. Absolutely
but
right.
but its power has either been established or it's there. And you said something earlier that I think every American has to face right now. We are being run by a minority, and not the minority that they talk about. We're being run
Right.
by a white minority who's a minority even in their own party.
Right.
But what does happen is I've said it before. I believe this to be true. Why do the Republicans keep getting more conservative, more crazy? I don't even like to use the word conservative because we're beyond that. Just more crazy is because there's a base that votes, right? And then if they get that base plus the people that would vote Republican anyway, right?
Right.
Certainly it gives them an edge up in the primary. And then if they win, it gives them an edge up. And I know a number of people. I'm just surprised that they stay with the Republican Party, but they do. You know, I couldn't. Well, I couldn't be in it anyway. But at some point, I would say, this is not the party that I knew, because it certainly isn't. It certainly isn't the one. My
Mm.
mother was my whole family on my mother's side were Republicans, but it was a different kind of Republican.
Right. Dave, this kind of is going to lead me into a conversation we had earlier in the week. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave and I, were discussing Crime and Punishment from Dostoevsky during the week. I brought it up because the one character from Dostoevsky, who commits two murders, is Raskolnikov, and he thinks he's an extraordinary person. He feels he has grievances against the world and all that is around him, that he feels it's justified for the better of the community and the country and the world for him to commit the murder. And I was, obviously talking about Trump, how Trump has this idea that he's an extraordinary man. So they're willing to overstep not only just the laws, but they're willing to overstep just morality in itself. And in Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov, he has these two things happening where he knows he's overstepping the law, and he also at the end realizes he's committed something that's not ethical. But again, because you're just mentioning psychology and how we look at things. It seems to me that it's not only Trump. It seems like these MAGA Republicans, or maybe even our neighbors, they have, it's almost to me, and maybe I'm wrong, it's almost as if it's contagious, where they think they're extraordinary, which means they're taking these Raskolnikov steps, whether it's to murder somebody or to do something like whatever it's doing. It's a transgression. It's overstepping.
I think you've got two groups in there. I think you do have some, especially politicians, who feel that they are somewhat superior to the general
Mm-hmm.
populace, right? Um, but even more than that, I think you have people who are just fearful, fearful of the other, fearful of the strange, fearful that they're losing something. Now, anybody who's familiar with our hometown, well, my hometown and where you live now, Bridgeton, um, at one point it had the third largest glass plant in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It ran
Of the Owens, Illinois,
Owens, Illinois,
where
three,
Paul's father used to do,
three,
safety checks
three,
and things.
three shifts, constantly 24 hours a day. And that closed, and that ended the town, basically. And then it went through this period. Now it's coming back as a Mexican American town. Well, there are people there that don't like that. Well, that's being played out all across the country, um, especially in some of these states where the red rule, like in the Midwest. No white Americans are working in the slaughterhouses, right?
Right.
No white Americans are working on farms.
Right.
No white Americans are working in. Now, some places they're still into oil, in oil rigs. Somewhat construction, but not as much.
But they all
I
seem
would
to have
say
these grievances that they make them
because
up.
because they blame factors that had no control, like Owens, Illinois. They made a decision which was financially prudent. They closed a plant and moved to Colombia in South America. My brother-in-law was Owens. He said the plant was 1/4 the size and produced more glass with less breakage than anything else. So this business move overseas, I can understand that. If I were a businessman, I mean, I'm not. If I were a businessman, I'd have to look at that idea. What I mean, think how much cost there is doing business in New Jersey
Right.
versus doing business in the Sunshine States, where they're right to work laws, and then compound that with China, where you get paid 5 cents every 10 years or something like that.
Right.
So the world isn't different enough yet because too many of us remember the way it was. Now, what will be interesting is when young people today, say in high school, when they get there, will they also look at this, or is it will just be a continuation? So basically, it has a lot to do with growing up. A lot of things in the 50s were kept hidden. Were there gay people in the 50s? Of course, but it was kept literally in the closet, right? For the most part. Now it's out, it's open, and people fear those that are different, and fear those that are not like them. It always fascinates me how you can read the Bible and come away with some of the thoughts that these people have, but it's meaningless because they don't follow. They follow what they want. There's you've got the for-profit pastors. Those churches in the South are huge. I mean, huge. Almost as big as the high school where you teach.
Hmm.
Um, and so just not, now, having said all that, that doesn't mean we give up, as I say. We do what we can. And you mentioned Mr. Trump. That's one of the things I want to talk about tonight because I think it's
Sure.
time
Let's do it.
time
Let's do it.
kind of get into this. And we've talked about it a little bit, but I think tonight I'd like to go a little bit deeper into it and maybe eliminate it. And the question is there anything legally stopping Donald Trump from being president of the United States? And the short answer is no. Okay. Now, we have seen he's been found guilty in the Stormy Daniels case of paying hush money, right? That was a civil suit. So it's not like he's gotten away with everything. There's the Georgia voting suit case. There's another case involving his businesses in New York. And then there's the most serious of all is his involvement in January
Documents.
6th. Well, I think there's documents, But I think the most serious of all is his involvement in the January 6th case, and I'll tell you
It's
why
gonna
in a
be
moment.
harder to prove though, because he
I,
uses
I
that mob language,
I understand that,
and
but
we all know
that's the
he's
one.
guilty, and we all know he
That's
did it. But it's like you got to say the exact sentence. I ordered these people. It's
first of
bullshit.
all, first of all, we know, and Donald Trump has actually said it again. I'd never drop out. It's not my thing. So first of all, he's in. He's in. That's number one. He's running for president, and he's in his mind, and there's nothing is going to change that, right? Now, here's the actual lawyers. Nothing at all in the Constitution or anywhere else that prohibits a person from running for office if they have a criminal charge. If they've been convicted, there's nothing there. Basically, there's like the three things you have to be: 35, have lived in the United States, a citizen of the United States, and lived in the United States for a certain number of years, and that's it. Again,
Mm-hmm.
deficiency in the Constitution. Do you really think people expected George Washington to commit a crime? Although he did, I mean, in terms of different business things, but it wasn't looked at that way. So we've got Trump. He's running, no question about that. And then we look and see, well, is there any historical precedent? And we mentioned one, but I ran across a couple others. Would you like to know how many people have run while serving time in prison for president of the United States? Any guess?
Well, I do know that
one we talked about.
Eugene Debs,
Eugene Debs.
And I have I have no problem with him running for prison because he was not a bad guy.
No, he wasn't.
He had honesty.
In fact, he was part of that Espionage Act.
Do you think that Trump even knows who Eugene Debs was? Like, if he had to write down, give me one sentence, Eugene Debs, do you think he'd actually know who he was?
No, I don't believe that.
Okay.
The other two I'd actually forgotten about, but it's interesting. One was there was a conspiracy theorist in the 1980s named Lyndon LaRouche.
LaRouche, and they love him in Russia too, by the way.
Yeah, well, he was convicted of tax and mail fraud.
Oh, he's a fucking nut.
And ran for president while in prison, right? So it's established.
Oh, he's sick.
And then going back even just a little bit more was Leonard Peltier. That was the Native American leader.
Right. I just want to just add a note because there is this historian who's very pro-Russian, Z-Russian, who part of his shtick is about the elite. And he always brings up Lyndon LaRouche as the American candidate who kind of caught on to that shit, And this is the bullshit that's over there. But Lyndon LaRouche, I remember him well. He was fucking. Right. You remember seeing he'd always have about an hour-long show while he was running for president, right? I mean, he's a fucking nut.
Well, we've had a few nuts that got in the White House, Trump being one. Now, interesting enough, this is something that I find interesting too. Actually, a president has been charged and found guilty and paid a fine. Do you know who that president was?
I'm thinking. I know it wasn't Jimmy Carter.
No. Go back before that.
No, I'm not going to guess because I don't know.
Okay, no, I just run across this from time to time. I just think it's a fascinating fact. Ulysses S. Grant, in 1872, was arrested for speeding his horse carriage down Pennsylvania Avenue, right? He paid a $20 bond, got out, agreed that he was guilty, and that would be worth about $500 today, I guess. But so we're starting to see this thing build, and it gets a little frightening because people naively think that, okay, this will stop Trump. And I don't think that, I really don't see that case. And we were talking before, I just got it here, I want to bring it up. The U.S. Constitution outlines only 3 requirements, Brian. That's it, 3, to be president, to become president. A person must be a natural born citizen. That's why, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger could never run. 35 years or older, and a U.S. resident for at least 14 years. And that's it. That's it.
Well, then if that was the case, then Martin Van Buren was technically our first president because he's the first president to be born on mainland of the
Right,
United States.
right. I mean, that is, but of course that was waived during that
Right.
time. Uh, and I think again we were talking earlier, and this is just another area where I really argue with originalists for the Constitution. I think it's absurd, right? Because they couldn't conceive of their leaders doing what some of our leaders are doing today. It just wouldn't. Now, where it does get a little interesting is there are two areas of interest that is very unclear. A lot of states, Brian, don't allow felons to vote. In fact, in a couple of states, it's for life. In others, once you've served your sentence, you can vote, right? Well, if you can't vote and you're a felon, does that any way impact your ability to be president? And that would be a constitutional question that would come up, obviously. I mean, that would, but at this point, relying only on the Constitution, I don't think that argument would hold. And the other one is, what does happen? What does happen if Trump is elected and then convicted, right?
Right.
Does that change in any way? That would that would be.
Well, if he gets
kind of-
elected, you can forget about any conviction because he'll just have. This will be a fascist nation. So I think that's a moot point.
Now, the reason why I say January 6th, I put that over some of the others, is there is a provision that anyone found guilty of treasonous activities toward the United States cannot hold public office. So that's the one that could wipe away his ability. But even there's also been things that presidents are somewhat above the law in certain things. So the answer to anybody who's asking the question is simply this. At this point, Donald Trump, we know facts. Donald Trump is running for president. We know that. Donald Trump is leading in the polls in the Republican Party. Donald Trump is a point away from Joe Biden in a head-to-head race in some polls. And Mr. Trump,
which makes it even more likely that he would cheat because he is that close.
Well, yeah. Well, there's no question. I mean,
he wants no margin for error.
Right. Now the question becomes how much, what he wanted after is that when, in the last election, he wanted things overturned. And that's not as easy as it seems. I mean, it's really not, Brian. Even if you have the election commission, what the danger is going in, what you do, right? In other words, if somebody jimmied the voting machines in a district, which could be done, very easily.
Light up the mailboxes.
Right. So, again, summing up Mr. Trump, I think we better brace ourselves for Trump 2024 as a candidate, barring death. I think.
Well, there are Republicans. Look, he's going to be the nominee unless something happens, but there are Republicans who will run. We know that DeSantis probably will declare himself a candidate within a week or so. At least that's what's anticipated. I just don't know what a Republican convention would look like, or even a Republican debate if there would be a debate again.
Well, that's it. The Republican.
He probably wouldn't let it.
The Republican National Committee is already saying no. Now, interesting, Trump, of course, is controversial in everything he does. I don't know if you've been following the story. CNN is going to have him on a town hall, and they're under a lot of fire for doing that. Because there are people who believe that Donald Trump right now is just a citizen, and that's true. He is an ex-president, but he's running again. So does he deserve a town hall by himself? Now, CNN, why are they doing it? Of course you know why they're doing it, Brian. Why are they doing it?
Well, I think two things. It's for ratings. And another thing is, too, is that CNN is already moving slightly to the right, and this would help get those conservative viewers, whatever they can get.
Of course. And that comes down to money, right? I mean, so anybody who thinks a news organization, cares about the news, it's a secondary consideration. It's a money.
I do think individuals within the network do care. Like you take a Lawrence O'Donnell, he fucking cares. Right. I know that as much as money as Rachel Maddow makes, she cares.
Right. but that's not the news organization themselves. Okay, I mean they are a
Right.
business. They're a
And
money
that's why
making,
they're constantly going and coming.
and part of the problem was when they were established. Networks wanted news for two things. It gave them kind of a prestige, right, to have national news, and then also it was very inexpensive. But now, when you start paying the Rachel Maddows and the Tucker Carlsons
Right.
and the superstars of media, that cost is somewhat greater. And of course, we're all going to wait to see what Mr. Carlson does, what Tucker does. Um, I was initially leaning toward the idea. I thought he would run for office. I don't really think. I don't think so yet. I think he'll wait until after and see. So he'll want to be a voice in 2024. Will that voice be at Newsmax? Will it be something that he starts a podcast? Will it be something
Or some
else?
people say that he'll run for vice president with Trump. Which
Well,
is, and that's
the
not
what?
so absurd because just the idea that
Oh
Trump
no, 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 no,
made
no.
it.
Uh, we do know. I think we kind of know with certainty Pence will not be his vice president, and right
That's
now
correct.
Pence is undeclared, declared running for the presidency. I don't understand why he would do that. I really don't, unless it was to get back and take some votes from Trump. I mean, um,
I don't think he'd do that. I think first of all, his behavior shows that he's intimidated and he's spineless. So I doubt that he would get involved in something like that,
but he's still,
unless he was just an egomaniac and he just feels like he's got to
well,
run.
he there's some talk that, remember, of all the candidates, he's probably the most religious
Right.
in terms of his quoting scripture, and there's some talk that he feels he's divinely in tune with the divine.
Extraordinary.
Yeah,
Extraordinary.
in tune with the divine and being able to run.
And by the
Uh,
way, that does make a connection. So when I mentioned Trump feeling extraordinary, there is a piece of that with these religious fanatics too.
oh
It's a vicarious Jesus moment, where
well,
they feel
they feel,
they are the instrument for Jesus.
well,
Jesus
that
doesn't
too.
make it unless I do this.
Well, that's true, and of course, a leader of a huge church is very much a politician, right? I mean, in terms of what they do. Um, it's pretty powerful stuff if you're head of a large church, right? Um, you know, thank goodness the Catholic religion prohibits priests from having sex with women, because I think the Pope would have a whole harem of women who want to throw themselves at the Pope. Why not? Bet a Pope, that'd be pretty cool. Um, and of course, we talked religion a lot about this show, and my personal feelings. I don't care what anybody believes. I really don't. I honestly don't. I do begin to care when they start to tell others what to believe,
Right.
and that's where you cross a line. And I think we're seeing that more and more and more and more and more as this divide gets between godless America, which is the liberal side, and God fearing America, which is the conservative everyone side. Hey everyone, hey artificial, what's the man? Next, I want to bring up one of your personal favorites. You are a guitar player, right?
I haven't played for a while, but yes.
Yes. And I know that I'm sorry to do this. I know it's one of your personal idols, but I have to really talk about him today. Is Mr. Ted Nugent.
Oh,
Now, for anybody who's not into rock and roll, Ted Nugent, in my estimation, is the least talented person ever
he's
to
no
make.
Holdsworth, that's for sure.
No, he's the least talented person who ever made it big in rock. To me, I felt that way for years, and of course now more recently, he started to really move to the right. You remember he went to the White House, he and Kid Rock and two other entertainers. Kid Rock's now out shooting up Bud Light cans because because of transvestites. But here's something that I find kind of interesting. So we're talking about the South, right? So Nugent is going. Thank God, he's going on. He's what he's calling his last tour. He should have never toured at all. But whether that's true or not, he's getting up in age. He's got to be older than I am, because the only song he ever had that was good, and I refer this to people. There's a song by his first band, the Amboy Dukes, relatively unknown band, called "Journey to the Center of Your Mind," and that was really one of the first psychedelic songs, and that was pretty cool. After that, Cat Scratch Fever, no, no, no way. Catmandu, no way, right? I just thought he was a no talent bum who even then did shock value. If you remember, he came out swinging with his Tarzan going part,
Suspenders, right, right.
and it's the Tarzan line
The
quote.
Great
You know,
White Buffalo. A song
to
about
hide.
killing a buffalo.
Now he has an established over the past few years has gotten more and more progressively radical. He called President Obama a subhuman mongrel. I thought that was kind of nice. Um, and he's taken other stands too against LGBT. So he had a concert scheduled for in the summer as part of this tour in Birmingham, Alabama. And guess what, Brian? The venue canceled him.
Hmm.
They had now this is Alabama, right? They had such an outcry of people. They had on Facebook and Twitter, their two accounts, right, of this venue. They had more than 1,000 comments against Ted Nugent. And again, we talk about economic threat. A lot of them were, if Mr. Nugent played, I will never attend your facility again, right?
Right.
And they were able to back out, or able to cancel. And basically, what was he accused of? Well, of course, he's across the board. He was accused of hating women, hating gays, hating liberals, hating Obama, hating Biden. I want to look here. I have a note here I made. What do you call Biden? I want to see if I can find it. Somewhere here. Oh yeah, but he's compared Joe Biden to Adolf Hitler, which is like, yeah, okay, right. The only thing Adolf Hitler and Joe Biden have in common is that they led a country and that they're male.
It's just absurd. They just say all that kind of crap.
But and here's the name of his tour: Adios Mofo 23, the final tour. Well, Mr. Nugent, my personal message to you: your final tour came 30 years too late. You never should have toured in the first place, and good riddance. Now, people will say, and I'll also be dealing with this a little bit later in the show, doesn't he have a right to play? And the answer is no. And why is that? Because he's playing as a business, right? There's no federal government involved, no state government involved, no bands involved. It's simply the power of money. In this case, potential lost revenue for having Ted Nugent play. And other people face it. Springsteen's faced that after he did about the killing of Amadou Diallo in New York. He was under quite a bit of fire. Yeah, Veg, I agree. The Nuge is, like I said, I just, God, there aren't words to describe before this, how little I respected him as a musician. And, Wild Man, that was his appearance. And now he's starting to pay. So is that a sign of things to come? I don't know, Brian, but I just thought that was kind of interesting that it was Birmingham, Alabama, where this
Because
occurred.
usually venues will cancel when they know that sometimes they don't sell enough tickets, and they'll say
Right.
something else
Well,
like, we
oh,
couldn't
no.
do this because of whatever
No.
technical
No,
issues.
but this came out. I mean, they admitted that there was just too much community unrest for Ted Nugent to play. So, Mr. Nugent, go away, go away. But again, that's something we have to. We're not going to talk about tonight, but sometimes we have to look at. This is something else that's relatively new. This cancel culture idea. Now, in this case, it's good. In this case, it's warranted and it's good. Sometimes I'm not so sure. For example, I know you shouldn't have hate speech, but it worries me a little bit that universities now are canceling a lot of right-wing speakers.
Right.
And I think you have, what is it? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. We know that's kind of a fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if they stand up, and advocate overthrowing America, that's one thing. I think maybe we are, but I think universities are supposed to be places of free interchange and exchange of ideas, right?
I saw Alger Hiss. I remember that. There were people who hated seeing him. People liked seeing him. It was intense, but the university did it.
Yeah,
a conservative university too, where I went.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think that's something we have to be aware of if we are on the liberal side, is not to be, what am I saying? Not to be home teamish and say, well, I'm glad Ted Nugent got canceled, but I don't want, but I also want to have this speaker canceled. I mean, I'm thinking of the person the first place he spoke, and I happened to be there. I was a reporter. The first place he spoke, David Duke, from Klan fame and Mississippi Senator fame. He spoke in Shiloh, about what's 5 miles from where you live now.
Yeah, 5 miles, right from Bridgeton.
So that was and he spoke, and it didn't create any Fuhrer in the Klan rising. So I think we have to be careful as we move on, as we get more polarized, to understand. I hope we never get to a point. Okay, what's the what's the quote? Be careful when you deal with monsters that you not become a monster yourself, or beware when you stare into the abyss, because at the same time the abyss is staring into you. And I think
Mm.
we do have to keep not the when they go low, we go high kind of thing. But I think we do have to keep in mind that certain rights have to be preserved, even if we might disagree with them.
Right.
So, that's a point. I think maybe as an educator, it concerns me more than others. But I think of if you guys speak, and then again, I'm not one of the people they're speaking out against. So maybe I'd feel differently if I were a woman, or if I were gay, if I were trans, if I were black, if I were Hispanic. But at this point, I think sometimes you still have to let them speak, and then shut them up in other ways. Shut them up
Hmm.
with the ballot box. Shut them up by having a protest outside. Right? Nothing wrong with that.
Right. Right.
As long as you allow people, and don't do what they do at abortion clinics. Don't stop the people from going in. But certainly there's something. I mean, if you feel strongly, an abortion is an issue. I think it's one of the 3 issues or 4 that, unless something changes, will be driving the 2024 election. Um, because it's a Supreme Court is headed that way. States are headed that way. Uh, I think the next Republican president will push for that if he had some kind of national ban, on abortion. And most people, again, there's another issue you talked about, Brian. That's another issue the American people disagree with. Just like they disagree with guns, they disagree with restrictions on abortions by a fairly significant number, percentage wise.
No,
But
they're
yet
not the Supreme Court either.
it still comes into play now. I'm
And
going to
again, but
skip that.
that again, we go back to autocratic and fascist nations. That doesn't even matter. That the majority
Well, that's
say is
and that's where we're headed. I mean, I don't know if we're fascists yet. I don't know if we're
well, we're
authoritarian,
definitely moving toward authoritarianism.
and that's what I'm saying. And you're exactly right, Brian. I mean, I'm agreeing with you that while we're not there yet, and of course, I think the danger of America is that still, despite all its faults, it's still, if compared to many places, it's better.
All right.
Uh,
Well, that's changed, and then that's going to lead me to the next. I do want us to take a peek
sure.
at Steve Schmidt's video. Now, I won't watch the whole thing, but because we'll get a good picture of what he was trying to say here. Yeah, I'm going to put this on. So hopefully you'll be able to hear it. Hold on a
No
second.
sound, Brian.
Okay. Sorry. All right. A little bit of a problem here for a second.
That's it.
Just,
That's interesting.
yeah.
He's like naturally 7. They do all the instruments with their voices, and he does the whole music
I
thing.
don't know why that doesn't work, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to do something that I think is going to work, and I'm going to just do this real quick. I am going to do an overlay with the screen share. So we'll do this, and let's hope that that works.
Nope.
Nope. Okay, I'm gonna do one more thing, and if it doesn't work, I won't do this. Okay, so let me just check my settings, see if I can change something.
I forgot how much I missed this during my almost year off
All
the
right,
show.
let's try now. I think I'm gonna try that. Let me go back.
This past week of MAGA
We're good.
Republican extremism should give everybody in America pause. We should take time to think about what it is that Donald Trump, the MAGA movement, and all its many tentacles stand for. What is it that they believe in? Is it the same as what Ronald Reagan believed in, and George Herbert Walker Bush, and Dwight Eisenhower? Or has the Republican Party metastasized turned into something new, dangerous, cancerous, illiberal, antithetical to the tenets and ideals, not just of the founding of the Republican Party, but of the founding of the United States? Has the Republican Party become a vehicle for a foreign ideology? It has. What is the name of that ideology? What should we call it? What is it that we're seeing? What do you call it when Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida demands that Florida businesses, including the most important ones in his state, get in line behind his political agenda? What do you call it when the leader of a government says there will be no dissent of the government or the government will punish you? What is the name of the philosophy that holds that the state is superior to the citizen, that the citizen serves the state and not the other way around? There was a philosophy invented in the 20th century by an Italian. He made it up. He was the father of it. He gave a speech defining what it was and what it wasn't. His name was Benito Mussolini, the father of fascism. He wasn't the only fascist. Hitler was a fascist. It's important to remember, while all Nazis were fascists, not all fascists were Nazis. Pinochet was a fascist, and so was Franco. Fascism has come to America, and not for the first time. Charles Lindbergh was a fascist. The pre-war America First movement was a fascist movement. It was sympathetic to Adolf Hitler. In fact, it was downright supportive of him in many quarters. We should always remember the truth against the mythology of the Second World War. The truth is that after Kristallnacht, Madison Square Garden was sold out by American Nazis. On the stage was a giant banner featuring George Washington, festooned with swastikas. The stormtroopers marched. The American Führer, Fritz Kuhn, spoke. Fascism isn't new to America. When Donald Trump ran for president, he ran as a narcissist and an egotist. He ran as the host of Celebrity Apprentice. And everybody around Donald Trump, including Donald Trump, believed he had no chance to win that election. But he did win. And when he won, he accumulated great power. And he drew to him all manner of ideologues and cynics to match his corruption and his self-interest. And over time, that mutuality of interests formed an ideology. And the ideology it formed was the one most consistent with Trump's personality, his narcissism. A fascist ideology was reborn on American soil during the Trump years. Let's look at the events of the last week.
We don't have to guess, all the events. We can, they're going to show what happened down in Tennessee. But I think he makes a good point that, that fascism was always here. It's just the question of how much. And now
my question to you, and it would be interesting, if you were to poll every American, right? Every American, you can't, but say you did, and ask them which scares you more, fascism or socialism, it would be interesting to see what the answer would be. Now, first of all, 90% of the people responding probably don't have a clue what either one means.
Right.
Or they have a mistaken idea of what it means. But for myself, I fear fascism much more than socialism. Socialism,
because there are elements of socialism which have been beneficial to our society, and we've lived with it for a long time.
Education,
right?
Socialistic. Highways, socialistic. I mean, right, elements of it. My question is, and Mr. Schmidt, interesting character, very smart. Was one of the chief.
He's a wordsmith too. He's very good with putting together.
The idea is with Mr. Schmidt. Excuse me. He was one of the really people behind the scenes of the Republican Party, right?
Right.
And I give him great credit. He realized very quickly that Trump was Trump, and has become certainly a leading voice against him. Now, people in the party dismiss him if they're still with the party because he's a traitor. We agree with him, you and I and others, so we're okay with him. My interesting thing is, how do people who don't or haven't decided, does that what he said have any sway or bearing on the case? And it's not a reason.
No, well, as he says in the end, though, he basically says it's critical that we go out and vote and these people out.
Correct.
And he's not even saying we're going to win. He's not saying that at all.
No. But
Okay,
Brian,
I found this on the web for Aces Not.
Siri's got to shut the fuck up.
No, I get that sometimes too. Siri and Alexa. I get Alexa more than Siri. The problem becomes, or a problem becomes, that if people vote either special interest, right, in a local election or small, or they vote pocketbook issues, and so again, where the economy is in November of 2024 will have a lot to do with the election, right? Maybe more so than anything else.
I hope not. I still think first of all, that doesn't work for Republicans these days. They will vote Republican no matter what the economy, even if it's good. I mean, I have Republican cousins who they're praying for the price of gasoline to go up,
right?
Because they want to see Biden destroyed, and
so
do Republicans in Congress. They're happy to see it go up.
We've talked about this before, again, a lot, but I suppose you look like, depending where we want to look, I blame Richard Nixon probably for the start of this. And certainly Newt Gingrich plays a role in that. Ronald Reagan letting other people take over for him, you know what I mean? In other words, I don't know how much of his ideas were original. So, I mean, it's been a long time coming, but I don't think, again, I'm still stunned that Donald Trump won. I'm going to be honest. I
remember that night we talked, and then we hung up, and I remember just laying in bed there and saying, "I can't believe this." I woke Ron up at 2 a.m. He said he won.
Yeah, because we were down in Atlanta, living in Atlanta at the time, and when it became apparent, I think I mentioned it was kind of interesting. Chris Matthews was doing reporting for MSNBC that night, and he had the magic, the thing in his ear that he was getting reports from. And he said, he was saying all along, he said, well, Pennsylvania will be okay. I'm hearing that Philadelphia is doing well in terms of, and then I saw this look on his face and I said,
Wow.
this is this. And from that moment on, that's when that Midwest run kind of came in. Again, we're going to depend on, you said it, I agree. We're going to depend a lot on minority vote.
Right. And they have to come out.
Because the Republicans have attacked every damn minority there is. Name me one they haven't, and they attack everyone. So
Clarence
if you remember,
Thomas.
What? The what?
Clarence Thomas. They love Clarence Thomas. So do billionaires.
Well, sure, why not? Give money to Clarence. I don't.
He'll take it.
I would do that all the time. I mean, just give money to a Supreme Court justice. It's not going to influence them at all. Yeah, right. Okay.
And John Roberts does absolutely nothing.
Well, he's ineffectual. We know that. Like I said it before. I'll say it again. Roberts was okay to a certain extent if it was a 4-4 court and he had the deciding vote. Now he's completely useless because it doesn't matter. Even if he sides with them, you still got the 5 conservative votes.
Right. And he's getting what he deserves.
But unfortunately, what he deserves reflects on what the country gets too.
Right.
If
we have to pay for it.
That's one of the bad things about elected officials. I mean, if Jeff Bezos goes broke tomorrow, Jeff Bezos and Amazon employees would suffer, right? I mean, that would be it.
I tend to agree with Veg on this. I think Powell's kind of working with the Republicans on that, or at least he's doing it's a coincidence of once.
Well, I think there's no question. Look, to me, Biden is president, right? He will get blamed for recession more than anyone else, correct? Right. So, of course, the GOP is going to do everything it can to bring that about. Mm-hmm. USA could default. And that's an interesting thing. common garden. I think there was a time, maybe I'm naive in this, but I think there was a time when honor had something to do with politics. I really do. I mean, you could dismiss George Washington and 7 of the first 8 presidents for holding slaves. I mean, I'm not going to get into that argument, but I'm talking about them believing they were kind of honorable men and acting somewhat honorably. And the other thing that's disappeared from the political scene, and this is a danger, is shame. There's no shame. Shame is a great control. Like if you feel shame
and humiliation.
I mean, obviously, we'll get back to Mr. Nugent. They'd hit him but he should relook. I mean, he should look at this and say, is this true? Is there some shame there? Now he won't and retrench because shame doesn't exist.
Right.
Shame doesn't exist. I mean, how can Clarence Thomas? Well, first of all, I would be terrified to get up in the morning and see Ginny next to me. That would just terrify me. His wife. But the idea of, man, I hate, I'm going to use a term I don't even have a right to do as a white man, but you talk about Uncle Tom, it's Uncle Thomas, because Clarence has never cared anything in his legal opinions. And to sit there quietly and silently, which was 6 years, he didn't say anything on the bench, something like that. And then to find out,
Anita Hill warned us, but and even Biden didn't.
Well, yeah. Again, had that been a different time, but then that's kind of maybe one of the good things, or a good thing about this current case against Trump and the rape. If he is found guilty, civilly, that's a plus that women can come forward. I'm sure, Brian, that over the histories, there's been women who've, claimed things have happened to them that haven't. But I think more often things have and they haven't been believed, or things have and they haven't reported it. That would be my take on it. No
right.
Scientific data to support that necessarily. Second, now you said, DeSantis is looking to run. Do you see any way that he won't?
I don't know. I would think that.
Veg, I don't want to argue with you, but you're close. But it's really unfortunate. It's Jenny, not Ginny. But I like that. I'm going to use that now. If I ever do that song again, I'm going to use Jenny, and dedicate it to the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's wife. But go ahead, Brian.
I don't know. I'm thinking if DeSantis realizes that he can do no good for himself by running, he cannot beat Trump, and people may be upset with him. Because if he does run, he's got to attack Trump. I mean, and he's really
it's already started. I mean,
it would be a delight to see that happen. And he has his own problems with Disney. I don't know, Dave. I would like to see him run against Trump. I mean, he's a danger himself to the country. I'm talking about DeSantis,
right?
But I don't know. I don't know what happens behind the scene in the GOP right now.
And that's an interesting.
I mean, what Trump seems to have shit on everybody. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
Well, I also think, what you say, he's not afraid to say anything, right? I mean, Donald Trump will say anything.
He'll say anything.
Anything, and he made some things stick, like Sleepy Joe Biden, right? I mean, as
low energy,
as insidious as that is, right? But it starts to come in there, and he used some other things. And he's not
Jeb
adverse.
Bush,
Yeah, he's not adverse. And somehow, one of the biggest things he's perpetrated on the American people, that somehow he's a macho guy. Yeah, right. Okay, sure.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
Grabbing pussy, if that makes you a macho guy, maybe. But even that.
Well, if you saw his deposition, he admitted to saying it. And he also, I think he had to tell the truth in that. And now people are going to look at that and say, well, at least he told the truth. I mean, I'm talking about his people.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Okay. No, he didn't do that. Well, they say, well, that's okay, because at least he told. I mean, they just go with the day. Like whatever the flow is, they go with it. They have no
Right,
backbone,
and I think
no
that's the
moral
day.
center.
This is where we go back to what you've been saying, Dave, about how will we ever, we may not ever get back as a country, because as long as you have that mentality where no matter what is being done or being said, there's no shame, and again, it ties everything together tonight with this feeling of being extraordinary, in the sense that what I feel I must do, I do because it's for the betterment of society. So they're going to confuse that, and they're going to say, I don't care what Trump does, I'm fucking voting for him, because all you want to do is let immigrants come in over the border.
And see there you are, Brian. I think, like you just said, because it's in the best interest of the country. There are people, large number of people, who think America would be better off without a black American. There are a lot of people
I mean,
who
there are
think
people like that.
America would be better off with no LGBTQ people, and the list goes on and on and on. I think, again, I can't go out and make people vote. I think voting is one of the most important things you do. Having said that, sometimes, though it is difficult, like here where I live in Arlington, it's Democrat. I mean, there's 5 Republicans, I think, in the entire district. So it's kind of hard to go. I mean, I vote in the general election. I always vote in the general election. But sometimes, there's nobody running in the primary, and it's just kind of a moot point. But I think, so I don't really say you have to vote in the primary unless there's a contest, but you should vote in the general election.
Right.
I just think that's almost a moral obligation that comes with being a citizen. If you're not voting for you, vote for somebody you care about. So if you're not gay, but you have gay relatives or gay friends, vote for them, right? Same if you have minority cross there. If you think immigrants made America, which they did, if you think about we're all immigrants, with the exception of the Native Americans, and even they're immigrants, because it looks like they came across from Asia on that side to here during some landmass that no longer exists. So I think what we're seeing, Brian, is this explosion of myths. And by that, I mean these myths that we held, right? United we stand. Okay. When? Now, if we got into a war, I'll ask you that. If we got into a war, would that bring America together?
Well, off the top of my head, normally I would say yes, especially if you're losing the war, because things change when you're in the foxhole, the trenches, and bullets come flying your way. You need that person. You need that person more than you need Jesus. On the other hand, with this group of MAGA Republicans, Dave, I don't know. I mean, why would Trump defend Putin in Helsinki when because the CIA says that they're doing this or this or that? So, if they're willing to follow them, again, I think that this psychological dilemma where they think they're extraordinary, and they will jump over that line and finally do it. I mean, in a way, what we've seen here, I mean, because what you're kind of testing me in the sense that, will they go that far, basically? Right. Because that's basically what you're saying. And everything so far tells me they have gone that far. They've even surprised me, maybe not completely, but how quickly this has occurred and how emboldened the governors have been. So I guess I'm going to answer your question honestly. I would have to say it would probably not bring us together, because I don't trust. They're that stupid, ignorant people, and I can't say either they're propagandized, or that you would say that it's this Svengali effect. They're hypnotized. They're kind of like the church congregation you're talking about in the South, where they're just, they hit somebody over the head and they fall over and they magically start walking again. These kind of things. I think that it's too far gone, just like the environment. I mean, and those who talk about, Veg talked today about, how it just doesn't look good with the environment. There's no return to it. I don't even think it's the environment now that's going to be first to go. Veg says, we don't know exactly when. is up for conjecture. But I think what's not up for conjecture is we could lose it all in this country. And
Well,
what's the difference now with the climate? I mean, if I know, like for example, I know I only have a certain number of years left. You know that. It's just the way life is. Our universe ends no matter what anyway. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying these things happen. There are no guarantees with evolution. This is what has happened to this planet through the system itself.
well,
This constant fighting and parasitism.
and again, that's not an area that I know well. The environment and climate change. I mean, I follow it loosely, but I do think this, from what I've read and what I've heard, it's going to be hard. It's not like, okay, I think a lot of people think, or many people think, like it's going to be one day, right? The ozone layer, and we're all going to die. That's not going to happen, Brian. What's going to happen? It's going to be a slow process, and it'll affect poor people and people near water first, and that in turn will lead to problems, right? Of mass immigration. Had a bad thought today. What would it look like if Trump was Charles being coronated? Thank you, Franz. Now I'll have nightmares tonight seeing the crown go on Donald Trump's head. So I want to appreciate that comment. I think it's a great comment. I'm going to turn around just a little bit. Would Trump like it if he got it being coronated with a crown on his head? And the answer is absolutely yes.
Well, essentially, that's what they want. These Trumpers, they want a monarchy,
right,
in any way or shape or form. And Trump does it. He's benevolent to them.
That's something I look. We're all interested in what we're interested in. And boy, there's a real powerful statement, right? But I don't get America's fascination with royalty like today. Are you going to get up? What was it? You had to be up.
Yeah, every channel had the coronation. I was getting sick.
6 a.m. I mean, I could care less. That's me. So I mean, it's just, it fascinates me, and I think that resonates. America likes power, and certainly the crown has power, just like Trump. Our presidents. There's another question. It's been debated. Will England end its monarchy? And
doesn't look like
the monarch. The monarch really has no power. I mean, it's really just a titular head.
Right.
I mean, prime minister really, and controls what goes on in the country.
And as Britain continually, the demographics change there, maybe that will change.
And they are changing all over the world. King Trump, yeah. That idea, as I said, I mean, I think that's part of what we're also dealing with. We've never seen immigration of the other kind like this, right? I mean, okay, let's look at America. We're speaking about America only, but it's happening in other white countries too. Basically, the immigration, okay, in America, let's run this through. It was British first, right? Pretty much so, with some Spanish thrown in the periphery. Then came Swedes and the Dutch, right? Then the Germans.
The Irish, I guess, after that.
And then the Irish. And that brings us to the Civil War, right? So we have the Native Americans, which we've always subjugated. We have blacks who are enslaved for the most part. And then this white group drawing. Now, so it wasn't really until the 20th century when we began to see this influx of beginning the others, because they spoke other languages, right? Especially Mediterranean, Italian. But they very quickly could assimilate because they're not black, right? They're not Hispanic. And now, these numbers, and again, I think that gets to the whole thing we talked about tonight, just fear of the other. Why do I have guns? Because those people are going to come and get in my house. Well, who are those people? They're Americans, right? And I think, again, too, bring back that gun debate a little bit. It's sort of like cancer. I mean, it is a cancer, not sort of like cancer. It is one of America's cancers. But just like with cancer, there are many forms of cancer, right? I mean, cancer is a thing. It's basically a cell that goes rogue. I mean, that's basically what happens. But there are different kinds of cancers. And there are different kinds of gun problems. I mean, we have the gun problems of the inner city, right? That's gangs shooting each other. We have the problem of this stand your ground. We have the problem of the mass shootings, right? That are not racially motivated. And all that topped off with this idea of a cheapening of life. And so, pick your poison, right? Environment, guns. But there is one area that I'm going to move on to tonight and start because, like I said, I've given up on the guns. I mean, I really have. I'm not a defeatist by nature, but I'm just saying I don't see it changing. So why not use my time and energy? And I'm very worried, Brian, I don't know if you are, about book bans. So let's start there tonight. Does that concern you at all, banning of books?
Banning of books?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
I think if anything flies in the face of American freedom, that's part of it. Freedom to say what you want.
We go back in the dark ages. That's why we could have had computers in the 1700s had things like that not happen.
Right. And of course, just a few statistics that I ran this week around. So in 2022, year we've just completed, according to the American Library Association, in America, there were 1,269 instances of book banning, the majority being in schools and libraries, right? Now, that was compared to 2021, 1 year earlier, when there were 729 instances. So it almost doubled, right? Almost doubled the incidents. Now, in 2023, where we are now, there's a 28% increase over 2022, which means it is a growing problem. Now, what kinds of books are being banned? Basically, again, dealing with LGBTQ or minority concerns. Now, if you notice, it's reaching into the schools in many ways. It's one thing to ban a book, but now we're starting to ban whole ideas of history. There's a meme that circulates from time to time with Rod Serling. He never said this, but it's kind of cool. He says, "Imagine if people are so ashamed of their history that they deny it," and that's kind of where we are. A lot of people want to, you can't deny the bad things that America has done. So that takes care of Native Americans and blacks and that group, and poverty and immigrants. But at the same time, this fear of LGBTQ people, I don't quite get that. I've said that before in the show. I just really don't quite get that. They're no threat to me whatsoever, right? I mean, who are they a threat to? Well, they're a threat to a group of Republicans and conservatives who feel that that Sodom and Gomorrah were real. And what there's supposedly, I should go back and look at this. I think there's one passage in the Bible that deals with something about men with men. I don't know, but whatever. Yet, ironically, again, that's relatively new. In the founding fathers, they really didn't care about those issues. I mean, they knew there were gay people, right? They didn't write anything about them. Didn't make a cause celeb. But the book banning, it should scare all of us, because if you allow book banning, then it becomes who gets the right to ban a book. And Veg, you're right. Ban them, burn them. And of course, every time I hear burn them, I think of Nazi Germany.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have to go that far. There's been, again, in the South, there for a while in the 60s, they burned Beatles records because the Beatles were the problem. Right. I mean, so censorship isn't necessarily anything new, but I think the political aspects of it and the growth of it and how do you stop it? Well, librarians are American heroes for the most part. Now, the other thing is libraries are evolving. Once upon a time, the library, Bridgeton Library, which has been there forever, I would go down there and there were books, right? Books and magazines. But now there's so much more computers.
Digital books and things like that, right?
And all the things that come into play there. And, again, I just think it's sort of like the freedom of speech, the idea of free expression of ideas. That's really what a book is, right? I mean, it's really an expression of an idea. Now, if you are dumb enough to think that reading about lesbians is going to cause your daughter to become a lesbian, you got a real problem. You better check yourself there, son. And there's also been a theory, advanced, that a lot of times opposition to gays, especially for males, are an idea of, sublimated. They worry about their own sexuality. I don't think that's so much true as the idea of they don't want the other to have a say.
They don't want people to enjoy sex, it seems like.
Well, of course, the Puritans were like that. But then remember, there was Hester Prynne, Scarlet Letter got around that. You just had to wear an A on your shirt. And I was thinking about it this week. Something that bothers me again in America, sort of in line with the coronation and following that. The Met Gala, the big thing in New York. Boy, do they have some ugly fashions. But yeah, we're riveted on who wears what. Who cares? People in Texas are being shot in the mall. So who the fuck cares what some starlet wears to a fancy party that only 1,000 people get in?
Right.
But I, again, I think
you do know that if Christopher Hitchens were here today, he would certainly say, again, I say, religion poisons everything.
You'd be hard pressed to deny that. I mean, again, now let me make sure that I'm being specific here.
It took me, years to kind of let all of that sink in.
Organized religion.
Right.
I think you have to, qualify that. I think an individual could have a religion.
Well, they're the ones with the power, the organized religion.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But I mean, a person can kind of confuse spirituality and religion. I mean, they just do because they kind of run together. But I think those that I do admire who say they are religious actually are showing spirituality more so than that. Or sometimes the humanistic views like Kurt Vonnegut had and others who've been humanists. And of course, it seems like, again, as we talk about this divide, I Veg, I could take that a couple ways. I hope you mean that's an area you don't really know much about and you can explore that rather than to be titillated by it. And it's interesting, isn't it, though, Brian? Have you heard anything about movies recently or TV? Banning of that? Have you heard anything recently? Nope. So that means something. And I just thought of that now. That means something. So why books and not TV and not movies?
I would say because of the schools. That's where they want to get in. They want to change school rules.
And I think you're absolutely right. In other words, it's grab the young minds before.
Right. They're not worried about the movies. Although people want to be going to the movies anyway because of all the shootings and like the Aurora. But no, yeah, it's definitely the school. They're trying to flood the school boards. They're trying to make things difficult, and they are. They're very effective.
And what's interesting is one of the in the forefront is 2 counties from us is Loudoun County, Virginia. That's been in the news for almost 2 years now. About the idea of, the idea of fighting for the curriculum, and this shouldn't be taught. And of course, I think sometimes you need to leave it up to the experts. I really do. So I'm really not interested in what anybody had to say about my surgeon who performed my triple bypass because he got me through it. Right. What I'm saying is he's the expert. Let him do what he did. I think with educators, though, let them do. And I'm not talking about the bit, but overall, I think if you look at the opportunities through the library and through teaching and the exposure, I think American education has done a pretty good job.
Epi from Scotland. Isn't this ironic?
Glasgow.
Glasgow, the Bridgeton Library, Glasgow.
Well, I learned to appreciate reading in the Bridgeton Library, Bridgeton, New Jersey. So same name. But
Epi watches. It must be like 4:38 over there or 3:38 in the morning. He watches us all the time.
I think a lot of people are watching the show to see just how much you're going to continue to shave your head. That's my estimation of it.
It's so easy to take care of. It feels so good. It's relaxing.
And I do want to compliment.
It's freeing.
I do want to compliment you. I think tonight you brought out your back scratcher again. Did I notice that?
I've used it about 3 times already. I've got to put some lotion on something.
Joey and I were having that discussion just the other day about how proud we were of you of giving up scratching your back on the show that you designed and run and produce. But I guess we were wrong, Joey. Sorry.
Nice EpiPen. I mean, jokes. Fox, yeah, it should be, shouldn't it, Joey? Well, I shouldn't have to pay for it, Joey, on my Comcast bill. But
now, you know what's interesting, and I've seen it done. All of us should take to this, and I've done it a couple of times, but sometimes I just don't. If we go into a public place and Fox News is on, we should just ask them to turn it off.
Right, like this. That was it. The Green Olive. They put on OAN, Newsmax, and Fox. I don't go there anymore.
And I think that's something we can do. And now some people say, well,
I did it. By the way, the Downtown Bank of Bridgeton, I discussed that with them one time. and they said that actually it was someone who was liberal said, "Please take off the Fox," and then people in the lobby started going at it. So they just started showing the cable thing that they have, like the local cable access stuff, because they
Right.
were having people arguing politics at the
Well,
bank.
I know, like in my dentist's office, they have we will show no news. They just have a no news policy, so they show bird documentaries or whatever. They limit what you can watch while you're in there. Um, and when you say Fox News should be banned, again, not gonna support its banning. What it should be is just like we banned Ted Nugent, right? Don't go to complain and don't go to Ted Nugent shows, and Birmingham music venue will cancel it. Not so easy with Fox. It'll be interesting to see Tucker's leaving, Carlson's leaving, created quite a vacuum. It's not going to be filled by Sean Hannity. It's not, because Sean already has established what he is and what he can do.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see who slides into that spot to be the next Tucker Carlson. To my knowledge, I don't really follow Fox News that much, but to my knowledge, I don't think they've named a replacement yet on any kind of permanent basis. And
Well, you know that Fox is upset with, and here's something I'm just showing in the screen share up top here, but it's
right,
I guess it's a left, more of a left organization. I guess Media Matters, and they were posting some videos of Tucker Carlson speaking to somebody on the phone, and he's just busting on Fox leadership. This, of course, they weren't online at the time,
well,
and they're going to court to try to stop this video, from
well,
somebody within the organization at the time.
isn't it interesting sometimes? I think, we're talking about book banning and books. I think one of the most powerful books ever written for idea, not the book was great, Mary Shelley. I mean, you can claim, you can make a claim that she kind of was the first science fiction writer with Frankenstein, but the idea of Frankenstein creating the monster, right? I'll come back to that in a minute.
I'll post it in a minute. Yeah, it'll fade, but I'll put it back on.
Just this idea of the Republican Party created a monster in Donald Trump, and the monster is now superior to the party. Fox News may have done that with Tucker Carlson, right? Tucker Carlson may be bigger than Fox News. We'll see. We'll see, because that's gonna be a pitch battle.
Michael Jordan was bigger than the NBA.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, LeBron James now, same kind of thing, because we look at stars and we identify them. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know that. I'm not saying that will happen, because Fox News still has a lot more money than Tucker Carlson, right? But I do think that you pointed out, and there are a lot of things coming out where maybe it wasn't so much what Tucker was saying on the air that got him fired. It was what he was saying behind the scenes about his bosses. And, Rupert Murdoch doesn't have long left. Okay, here we go. Let's get this. My question would be regarding book banning is, can the U.S. stop the march of right-wing fascism under the guise of bastardized Christian liberalism?
He's right, because that is under the guise of Christian liberalism.
Yeah. First of all, I think the important thing in there is bastardized Christian liberalism, right? All liberals are not bastards. That's not what I mean. That's what they would portray. The right would portray that. Of course, I kind of portray all right-wing people as being wrong, and they are, I think, in my estimation. But the book banning, I think, Brian, you were right when you say it focuses on the schools, because it's really control of minds, right? Young minds, impressionable
and it's
minds.
Local too, so the tentacles are everywhere.
They're
from the ground up.
There is a huge view, especially in the Midwest, well, the western states, Montana, Wyoming, and the South, that you send your kid off to college and they come back something other than what you want. And it's losing control, because again, you're exposed to ideas. You went to Bowling Green, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went to Villanova. Certainly that gave me more of a cross section of American people than Bridgeton, New Jersey, or
Right.
Bowling Green than Cherry Hill. So of course, when you go away, that's part of it. But a lot of people don't want that growth because they want to go back to the way it was. And you're not going to have 4 generations of coal miners anymore, right?
Right.
Probably shouldn't have them in the first place.
Right.
But by the same token, I understand the idea of it is when we talk about one world, I mean that's a whole other thing. But really today, if you want to do something, if you really want to do something, you better be prepared to leave your country to do it. You may have to because, you know, there's just or you certainly will have to leave your state. I mean, take my hometown where you live now, Bridgeton. Really, unless you want to be in retail, police, prison guard, or educator, there's not much there, right?
Right.
And even if you do, say you want to be a lawyer, you can still make far more money, 40 minutes up the road in Cherry Hill or 45 minutes across the bridge in Philadelphia. So this idea of small hometown America, it doesn't necessarily exist. Well, let me rephrase that. It certainly doesn't exist the way white America remembers it, right? Because Bridgeton, I haven't been there for a while, but my understanding is almost every store is filled. Is that true downtown?
Right, but if you go to Carl's Corner, one side is
So what's the difference?
well, the difference is basically you have a lot of like bodega type things going on.
Exactly. It's a Mexican American city now that's filling the
Right.
city. And you spoke earlier of Amazon and the damage that it has done. But
Again, I don't know that it's always completely been Amazon. I think that it was the shift with COVID. I think it was the shift in technology. And now you get the shootings, it's only going to make Amazon knows it too.
Well, yeah. Although
That's why they invested, because basically it's a distribution company now.
Oh yeah, no, and it's pretty damn good. All right, it's pretty damn good.
Goddamn right.
And so while I sit here and think about, and probably, I mean, Mr. Bezos' first place here in the three communities of which were one, Crystal City, Lumpton, National Landing, was 2 buildings from where I live. His first one. Now he's got 9 under construction or something like that. But the idea of it is, when you think about it, trying to think, it escapes my mind right now. But I know. We'll talk a little personal thing. Obviously, when you go through what I did, triple bypass, you got to really look at what you eat, right? And I would have argued with people that I ate pretty well, but as you look back on it, it wasn't quite so well as it should be, right? So we're looking for more healthy food. Judy's been diagnosed as pre-diabetic, so she wants to look at the sugar not good for me, salt, especially fat content for both of us. So we're looking to use a lot more newer recipes. And if you put a recipe book down, it gets covered with shit, so she's got this thing. It's like a book holder designed basically for recipe books. I think it was $24. She ordered it today. Now, we could have gone all over Washington, D.C. and not found one, right? I have no idea where there'd be one. Go to Amazon, one click, it'll be delivered tomorrow.
Right.
Pretty damn efficient.
Pretty damn efficient. And that's just the way society is going to have to work and basically not work. There will be a time when people, if we have a society, we have a planet, there'll be 4 days a week work, and then I don't even know why we have 5 days a week work. It's just this traditional idea.
Well, because once we had 6.
Yeah,
no,
but you may not even need to work at some point in time. Not in our lifetime, but.
Well, no, and I think that's true. Okay, so the other day, Target, or Target, the fancy French store, right? We were in there, and there were three of the aisles, open for cashiers, and 12 of the machines.
Right.
That's, my math is pretty good. That means 15 places, right? We're exchanging money for money for goods. Way back when, it would have been 15 people working. Now there's 3 and probably 1 overseeing those machines, right?
And at some point, you won't even have the machines. You just walk in and out, and that's it.
Well, it's kind of interesting. We have here, speaking of Amazon,
if you walk in and out,
we have an Amazon Fresh. Amazon took over Whole Foods. That's one thing, but now this Amazon Fresh is a pretty cool idea. You register your card, you register your Palm, you go in, and it comes out. Then you just walk out, and it registers everything you bought, puts it on your credit card, and that's what you do.
Well, there is a certain efficiency to it. I think the great thing about COVID is, if you think about it, the average American they're constantly moving their car from one place to the other. We're going to go to this place, to this place, to this place. It's so inefficient. So when you have a limited number of distribution instruments,
Right.
it does create more efficiency. And if you only have like Amazon delivering these things, so this way you don't have to go grocery store, this thing, and this thing, and you have fewer people doing it. It does take stress off the roads, and it's more efficient in terms of fuel.
And I think you're looking at our generation, Brian, is the last not to be born into the technology age, right? I mean, really, we were
Right. We were
pre-technology.
still part of the other generation.
Yeah, and so I still enjoy going into a store to see things. Like, I like to go and we have a Barnes and Noble here, which is interesting. Barnes and Noble is a pretty big company, but that's like the small bookstore now, compared to Amazon, right? But you go and you see what's there. But by the same token, we get. I looked at a book. I was going to buy it, and for the first time in my life, I said no because of the price. It was $35 for a book, and I said no. That's like $500 to see Bruce Springsteen. Nope, not going to happen. Not going to happen. I'll get the book out of the library and I'll listen to Springsteen live here at my house. Veg, does that mean you haven't used Amazon for 8 years? Very good. I commend you. I couldn't do it.
We almost quit last night. Ron had a problem with a product, and Amazon wasn't giving in. But eventually this morning they did. But I don't know, Dave. I think the problems it's much more problematic than just Amazon. It was going to happen either way.
And of course, the big thing recently, because of some things, is we've got this new, well, I want to say extra emphasis on AI, artificial intelligence. And that again is frightening if you think about it unchecked and, who uses it. AI in and of itself is not a bad thing, but how's it going to be used?
Right.
And we can't imagine. I mean, they're looking now at AI to write, they give it a formula. It can write detective novels. At what
I think it's like anything else we've seen. Like you've said, it's like a gun, but there are a lot of guns out there, and there are a lot of laws that make those guns deadly, or lack of laws, I should say. I don't know, Dave. I don't want to have this nostalgic view where everything turns out well at the end of the movie. You know what I mean? Because
it's not. No, it's not. It's not. It's going to be different. I think the problem becomes, if I really look at it and move it back, my problem is, as we rely more on machinery, right, and technology to do things, we also lose at the same time, right? For example, very simplistically, if I order something from Amazon, right, and it comes, no contact other than online, I lose that moment of contact with the clerk, right? I mean, not that everything was.
That was what the salesperson was usually the only person you had contact with from the company,
right?
At least you had that interaction, that personal interaction.
Now I'm with Veg on that. Judy can, I can't. I cannot buy clothes online. First of all, I went today. I like to get a couple more black shirts for summer, short sleeve shirts. And I went online. There's 572 kinds of black short sleeve shirts on Amazon. It'd take me a year to go through them. So there's that. But also, I like the idea of looking at them. Books I can buy online, right? Computer stuff I can buy online.
Yeah, well, if you have to go to the mall on the weekend for your black shirt, I'd be careful.
We don't have violence in our mall.
I think in general, though, Dave, technology, not religion, technology in general has made our lives better. You always want to go forward into the future. You don't want to go back. You go back, it gets worse and worse.
No question.
I mean, you might want to go back for a day and have some nostalgia.
No.
View.
I'm just saying. I think what we're going to need to do, though, is look at other ways of social interaction. What I'm saying is to remain human. Part of that is now what we're doing tonight with the group. This is a family. We've talked about it a lot. It's great. We look forward to it on Saturday night, or at least I do. Yep. Music is another thing. You know, I use Spotify. Um, that's it's got almost. In fact, there's one song by a very obscure band in the was in the I don't know if it's 69 or 70. I think it's actually 69. A band called Gun. They did a song with Race the Devil. That's the only song that I haven't been able to find, and it's on
I,
YouTube.
and you know what? We
But
got Apple Music last year, and I remember you told me years ago that Spotify, how you could it's just better now to just have it at my disposal, and that's it.
well, and that's and you can create your own playlists, and like
Right,
for me, again, we're talking about you're talking about modern versus old. A couple things very quickly. I remember when I started college in 1969. Went to Villanova, which is right outside Philadelphia, and the main record store in Philadelphia at the time was a place called Jerry's Records. It was on Market Street, the main street in Philadelphia. And when I started, it was $2.99 for an LP. And by the end of September, my freshman year, it went up to $3.19. And I thought that was outlandish. So one thing, of course, is the increasing cost of music. The other side of that, though, is I remember, especially as a musician, I'd want to learn one song and I'd have to buy the whole album, right? And
right,
today, you don't. There's new bands that bypass all the studio. I mean, they're doing everything in home studio. A
right.
friend of mine, who I've talked about, Baldy Silva from Toby Bo, the band Toby Bo. He just finished the home studio. He said, "I never have to go in the studio again unless they want me to come. I can do everything from my house." In production. He said sometimes they want to have me there, because there's a producer still producing the records. So yeah, you're right. We're not going to go back. We shouldn't go back. But I think at the same time, we need to keep in mind, uh, you know, okay, let's say your thing. I think you're on to something. If you only worked 4 days a week, right? That's good, right?
That's France.
But what are you going to do with that free day? You know what I mean? That becomes that's like
Nothing. If I want.
yeah, yeah, that's fine. But you really don't. How many nothing days do you have?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm just saying that it's less stress, and I think it will have a great effect on the mood of
Do, do,
people in
do,
general.
well, you got that already with hybrid and work at home. I mean,
Right.
some
It
things
was it was very relaxing.
for
Oh,
some.
geez. Ron just must have accidentally shut me down. This is weird, huh? Hold
You sure? Oh, wait a minute, Brian, behind you. There's something behind you. It's creeping up behind you.
on. Let me
No, well, like I said, I'm just looking at this like, and it's hard, when you're caught like we are. We're not the technological generation. We came into it. We can kind of pick and choose. But for example, my grandson, at 14, he lives a lot of his life online, but he's also an athlete. So I mean, I'm comfortable with that. He goes out, and I still think in order for us to remain human and have any chance at humanity, we have to have contact with other humans. That's the only way that works. And this idea of living, and I don't know that FaceTime's good, as a way, especially distance, right? I mean, that's the only way I get to see my grandchildren now is on FaceTime, unless we visit or they visit. The sheer amount of record labels that you can listen to, their whole back catalog of artists is mind blowing. Well, that's what I said. I said I found one song out of how many, you know, thousand more, that I've looked at, and that just didn't exist. So it's there, and that becomes overwhelming in and of itself too.
well,
Everything's
Dave,
available,
your phone obviously can track what you're
right?
looking at, and it's interesting because ever since I got Apple Music, I've been using the phone for music more than anything now, rather than say going on
Right.
Facebook or YouTube. YouTube used to be big, but now it's Apple Music. Now Apple Music and Spotify are basically the same thing. I mean,
They're really the same thing. It's just that if you're an Apple user, I mean, I've used both. It's kind of integrated with that, but
right,
I kind of like Spotify because originally it was designed more for just music. Apple Music was an afterthought of Apple Computer, right? I mean, they did very well. They have things that are there, and of course, initially there were some problems like the Beatles catalog wasn't made available, but everything now. Miss Vinyl, the only thing I understand that veg, and I know I've talked to purists who say it's warmer and it's better. My only problem is I scratched all my damn vinyl records, so mine
Yeah.
was skipping way, like that.
Or you had your friend do it and they fucked up. You said, you're scratching my record.
Yeah. So I said no. Um, but yeah, as we kind of wind down tonight, the show's taking a lot of different
Right.
directions. But I think one is, you said it. Um, the future's coming whether we want it or not, right? That's number
Right.
one. Number two, we have some limited say in the future. And so we should make sure that our voice is heard if we think that's important. Some things you're just not going to fight, right? You're not going to. And then it brings other things. Like I was thinking about my own neighborhood here. As I said, we have 9 construction projects of towers. There'll be the new triple thing where it's on the bottom, on the ground floor is retail, right? And then maybe a couple of floors of office space, and then the rest are apartments or condos. And 9 of 22 stories or more coming in. Well, then this week they started announcing what else is coming. We're getting a food court of 11, and when I say not like a mall court, like a really nice food court of 11 really pretty cool places to eat in this one location. So, the balance is you get more people, okay, if you don't like that, but with more people come more things. But then there's more traffic. But now with people working at home, there's not as much. The one thing it's done here, I don't know if it's every big city. If anybody out there lives in a big city besides me or urban area, the rush hour used to be, Brian, like 4:30 to 7. In most cities.
Right. They didn't even
Now
say
it's
5 o'clock. Now it's
yeah,
just
but now it's spaced out more. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's
right.
heavier before and after
Right.
because people are working different hours, or and they're still going out shopping if if they're doing that or whatever. So what are you looking at for next week, Brian? Anything big on
Well, let's
on
hope
your
there's not
personal?
another shooting. But for me, things are moving pretty quickly, Dave, in terms of the school year. I don't know. I think over the last, especially since you were out for all that time, Dave. I just am more in the idea that I just have to take each moment by the moment, and that's the way I'm gonna have to live the rest of my life. I
And is
just
that
can't deal with it.
and in all honesty, is that really that bad? I mean, if you think about it,
No, it
I,
is
I,
the right thing to do. I mean, you like Veg says, the point. Like I'm not even trying to find the point of things. You just
well,
live.
and I think being a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, of course, you get into that idea of one day at a time,
Right.
and really that's all you have now. I mean, that doesn't mean you can't reminisce and think about the past and improve what you did. It doesn't mean you can't think about the future. But quite honestly, the only thing you can control is that next portion of the day that comes. Like when we get done this show, I can decide what I'm going to do. Am I going to
Right.
watch an episode of Yellowstone? Am I going to read a book? Am I just going to go to bed? Are Judy and I just going to talk? All that we kind of control. But that you don't even control the next 24 hours. You don't know
No.
what's going to happen. And I don't want to say that what happened with me with the triple bypass was life changing, but it does make you think. Okay, and I
Right.
think what it made me think about is how long was I walking around with this time bomb?
You bet.
And to see when you hear that if it didn't hit at first, I said, wait a minute, 100% blocked, 2 arteries and 90%. How the hell were you alive? And they said, yeah, that's the question, right? Would it have been 10 minutes or would it have been tomorrow or would it have been, you definitely were headed somewhere. And again, that's that idea of planning. I could have been planning for 20 more years and now I may get them, but I certainly wouldn't have if something had happened. And then
Right.
again, you were talking tonight about the future and technology. I'm very grateful. I think in all honesty, I'm very grateful to live. When I say today, I mean
Right.
in this
You wouldn't
time,
be here. None
this
of us
time
would.
this time and place. Now, whether 10 years from now or 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now, people can continue to say that. I don't know. But I do think with science, I think we get better at it. And the question becomes if we don't destroy ourselves, and science continues to get better, that should make life better. Should.
Well, it'll once the pill that will help us live forever occurs, then you're going to see a complete change. You're
Let
going
me
to
ask you
see
something.
everybody drift from religion to
would you really though? I mean, think about that for a
Us.
moment. We're sitting here joking about it. Um, I mean, Dolly Parton's had enough reconstructive surgery for all of us. I love Dolly, but she's done quite a job on herself. But would you really want to live forever? I mean, that's
If
an
I could
interesting
be,
question.
if I could be comfortable, um,
Yeah, but what
and have new
you,
experiences. Otherwise,
so
no, it's
so
monotonous.
because right now, the longer you live, the more your body deteriorates. I mean, that's that just
Right,
is.
right.
Yeah.
That's part
So
of the problem, though.
yeah, I agree, Veg. It does. Um, I don't know, it wasn't like a Saul from to Paul Damascus Road conversion, but I do think. I mean, it gives you pause. To how fragile life is. Um,
Well,
how
I
sometimes,
think that we should have that type of philosophy, even when we go down the steps these days. I mean, maybe that's taking it too far, Dave. But
no, no, I agree. I mean, I think. Well, for one thing, I mean, as we get older, obviously we get closer to the end than the beginning, right? I mean, that's just.
right,
I mean, I've lived 71 years. I don't think I'm going to live another 71, and I'm fairly certain I don't want to live another 71. The other thing that came to grips, like it was funny how these things happen in life. When I got grandchildren, I said, "Wow, I really want to see them, grow up and get married and have children." But if that would have happened, then I want to see those children. It just doesn't. It's just at some point our life is finite, right? We
mm,
live, and then we die, and the question is, what do we do in between those two periods?
right.
Now, I'm not talking about some kind of religious judgment. I'm
Well,
talking about what.
I certainly wouldn't want to live forever, Dave. If everybody around me were gone, I mean, that's just
Well, I think that you see a lot now too. I mean, a lot more. Um, I remember, and I'll leave with this thought. It's not modeling, but I think it's kind of my mom, uh, when she was still alive. I asked her one day, I said, "Mom, why do you read the obits first?" And she came up with, I thought, an interesting answer that kind of reflected life. She said, "Well, let me explain that, son." She said, "When I was young, I read the school page, right? Because that's where my friends were." And then she said, as I got a little bit older, I read the society page, for marriages and births, because that's where my friends were. And she said, then as I got more power, I read the front page because that's where my friends were. And now I read the obituary page because that's where my friends are. So I think that's kind of that, travel through life that we're talking about.
right.
Uh, and, but next time, Brian, what I want you to do, well, Veg, I'm glad you didn't for what it's worth. And I'm sure you are too. And I think, again, it's one of those things Veg and I share that, if you, not, that you can, let's put it like this, until it happens, it's hypothetical, and then when it happens, it's real, right? I mean, that's true of everything. You know, um, you're talking about mall shootings. I mean, years ago they had one at Deptford Mall. I don't know if you remember that one. It wasn't a mass shooting; it was like two people. It was gang kind of thing. Uh, Gary, no, I think there's an interesting story about that. Next time, people will talk about that. Um, it was an interesting drug experience that Gary and I had shared back in the '70s. That maybe that is what happened. Well, if it did, I guess I've been in heaven, Gary, because I've kind of enjoyed my life. So I guess if I did die that night, it's been okay. I'm done, Brian. I think we've run
And we
over.
are done. And I thank you so much for getting
Uh,
us through this show because I didn't have too much. In fact, I didn't even do one of the things I thought about doing, but
Good.
the shooting and all. But I think it kind of worked its way through very smoothly. And I think, I think everybody out there has to understand. Dave and I, when we played music, the link that he and I had was that we were improvisers. The link that we have when we teach, we were improvisers. We both have lesson plans, but the moment we step in the classroom, it was just against the grain to have a note card and say, okay, I'm going to do this next. I'm going to do this next. And I'm not saying that's better as a teacher or
It
as
is. It
you.
is. I know. I mean, it is what we do. I mean, I
Right.
couldn't. Like, listen, I couldn't. I couldn't be a comedian if you paid me $1 million because I couldn't tell jokes. Plan it out.
Right.
That's just not me. It's spur of the moment. And I always used to say, like when I was doing my lectures here in D.C. or even when I was doing the Smithsonian period, I did that. I was like the Grateful Dead. When I was good, I was very, very good. But when I was bad, it was like having really bad brown acid. I mean, it was pretty bad. And I think that's the risk you run when you do what we do.
Right.
Uh,
Well, I think that
I'm
there's only one thing we can do. I mean, that's why sometimes I can just do nothing an hour before here, just no plan whatsoever, because I know I know how I operate, and I know how you operate, and it's always been that way with us, and it was never any different, whether it was music or was teaching, and that's we
Sure.
were the same in a certain sense.
And I do have one request though for next week's show. Could you go out and get a chia pet or something to put on your head? Really
No,
seriously, all right.
this is
Uh,
so. It feels so good when I take that shaver. So I don't have to go to get a haircut. I just use the shaver. It's just,
and
and in my hair, I mean, I had a full head of hair when I was younger, but it never did me any justice. I think I had 2 or 3 good haircuts my entire life that I could say,
well,
wow, that hair looks good.
I can
Never
say
had
that
it going.
I can say that you don't have one now with certainty. But you
Well,
know what?
it's
You know what's
it's
funny? I'm
just
sitting here.
feels good.
I'm sitting here laughing about it, but there's certain things that I do associate, and I do associate. That's very stylish today. What you have, very very stylish. But I still, all joking aside, I still associate it with skinheads and
Well, here's what Ron said. This is ironic that you said this. Ron, she has a certain knack for knowing what looks good and what doesn't. She said, you would look good if you had a ponytail on the back, and you could have your shaved head, but just ponytail on the back.
now. See,
I don't know.
I'm going more with mohawk with you.
Well, hold it. Well, Joey, I don't know if Joey's still here tonight. Joey, I'll tell you a quick Joey story. Now, Joey won't like this, but
Right.
Joey had one of his friends play with his hair, and somebody had a mohawk, and Joey came home one night to have dinner, and he had his cap on, and his parents said, Joey, when you want to take your cap off, and it took a lot for him to take that cap off, and he had to get his hair completely shaved from his parents to get that right. But Joey had a mohawk, and I know Joey's got a picture, and I wish he would share it sometime. I'd like to show Joey with the mohawk when he was in Cherry Hill.
Well, we will. On that thought, we will sign off, and maybe next week we'll see Joey with a mohawk, you with a chia pet on your head, and I'll be here.
Yeah. Joey just texted me. But Joey, I want that mohawk picture, okay?
Thanks, everybody.
Joey. All right,
thank you,
Dave. I'm going to sign off completely, okay, Dave?
Gotcha.
So I'll talk to you later. Got it.
Bye.
Folks, if you're out there and you're one of those you're incognito, please subscribe if you enjoyed tonight's show. We'd appreciate it. And consider becoming a member of Divided We Stand on Facebook. We don't monetize anything. We don't want anything. Dave wants $1.7 million from all of you, but he's yet to get it. So,
When I just heard a bell, I'm going out of here. Bye.
That's Joey texting me for the 1,000th time tonight. So Dave had to leave. Yeah, Joey and I used to have a mutual barber, and he used to always say, "There's a lot of wackos out there. You'd be cutting your hair and just constantly talking." This guy named Sam, and he'd say, "There's a lot of wackos out there." Sometimes the barbershop was a little bit wacky, But anyway, Sam was a good guy. I guess he's not around now. He must be 104 now or something like that. So, good night, everybody. Thank you, Veg. It's glowing tonight. It's better than I could have some of this grow, but it's not worth it. Good night. You help keep him sane. I know, but like you said, there's almost no point where but we keep going somehow, and you will keep going, Veg. It was a great video today I saw from your channel. It's great. It's funny, and you got a lot of subscribers there. Great job. All of a sudden, there's this like Lazarus effect. All of a sudden, you started really kicking some ass. So maybe you'll have like 100,000 subscribers in a year or something. Who knows? All right. And Franz, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. So we'll see you again, all 15 of you. See you. Bye-bye. Until next time, Mr. Sean Connery saying ta-ta.